participating in a national campaign. It's called Apply to College Week. So I'm sure every Lincoln High School has done it. This is our week that we're doing it. And it's just a push to help kids who need that extra help to apply to college. So we invite reps from all over who will come help our kids apply to college. And as of today, Wednesday, we've helped over 100 kids apply to college.
We took a test for SEC and then like admissions and stuff.
So today I took the Accuplacer math test to see if I could improve my score and see where I would be placed in if I were to actually go to classes at SEC. I found that I did a lot better than I actually thought I would have been. So I got a lot of help interpreting my score, where I would be placed in. Along with that, got help on how to apply for the FAFSA and how to do all that. And basically just look at which kind of scholarships I could actually qualify for.
Well, I've been really thinking about where I want to go for college, and I'm thinking about doing the academic transfer for SEC and then going somewhere else, so I feel much better about that.
Well, I took the Accuplacer math test for the elementary math test and to see if I could maybe get a better score than I did beforehand. And turns out that I actually did get a better score, and in ACT terms I got actually like 2 to 3 points better. So that was good. And then I found out that I wouldn't have to take as many math courses as I would have if I hadn't taken the Accuplacer test. I want to go into computer information technology or electrical engineering, so that's a really good thing that I don't have to take 5 more math classes.
So we did all the testing here, all the applying here. So this has always been a successful event. This has been a long-standing tradition for Northeast.
We get to learn and review over the scores that we get, and then we get to go through all these little steps. We get to go through admissions, or scholarships we want to do, or financial aid.
They helped me figure out like the different campuses that I could possibly go to and some of the scholarships that I might get.
Some kids have said they may not have done this had we not had it here. There are just a lot of kids who need that extra support of someone to stand next to them and help them fill out the application. So they're thankful for the support. I mean, of course, there's kids who've already applied, but this is kind of a reach out event for kids it's a great time to ask questions, a great time to get help.
I don't think I would have done this on my own, honestly, so I'm really glad that there are opportunities like this happening during the school day that I can just go to.
Well, I want to study elementary ed or early childhood, so I hope that SEC has a program here for early childhood so I can be able to go through that and become successful.
This is an event that takes our whole counseling team, and we're so thankful for the support of all our staff because they're letting kids out of class to come down to do it. So it is a Northeast Rocket community event because it's important that all our Rockets aim high and get to college.
In my slide.
I call to order this meeting of the Lincoln Public Schools Board of Education for November 8th, 2016. Laura, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Byer.
Here.
Mr. Boswell.
Present.
Mrs. Danick.
Here.
Mrs. Duncan.
Here.
Mr. Mayhew.
Present.
Ms. Mumgard.
Here.
Mr. Schulte.
Present.
I would note that the Open Meeting Act is posted at the back of the room, and we have minutes for approval. Are there any additions or corrections? Seeing none, those will stand as approved. Next, under special reports, presentations, and celebrations of success, I would like to recognize Matt Schulte.
Yeah, and if Colleen Finkhouse could join me at the podium, I'd appreciate that. Welcome, thanks for coming tonight. Congratulations, this is a pretty exciting thing for you.
It is.
You should be very proud of yourself.
Proud of my students.
Well, good. I'd like to present this in the form of a motion. Whereas Colleen Finkhouse, am I saying that right? Good. Whereas Colleen Finkhouse, a counselor at Lincoln Southwest High School, has been honored with the 2016 Yale Educator Award, recognizing outstanding educators from around the world who have supported and inspired their students to achieve at a high level. And whereas Colleen Finkhouse understands how best to help students get the classes and credits they need to have a complete and successful high school career. And whereas Colleen Finkhouse understands the importance of helping students prepare for success after high school and helping create a foundation for attending college. And whereas Colleen Finkhouse takes an active interest in her students in order to build trust and help students grow. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Lincoln Board of Education does hereby congratulate Colleen Finkhouse for having earned a Yale Educator Award and for her dedication to help students succeed in and after high school. Would you like to say a few things?
This is my strength, is to stand in front of you and be in this role. But I want to thank you for considering the actions and the merit of Ashley's words. I was humbled and truly humbled with what she had to say and what her experience was. I hope to have that be the experience for any of my students, but it is very meaningful for a student to acknowledge what you've done. And thank you for your acknowledgement of her as well as the recognition. I appreciate that. This evening I'm joined by my husband and my granddaughter. My granddaughter's a Southwest Silverhawk as well. So thank you for inviting us.
Thank you so much for serving. We really appreciate it.
Matt said that was in the form of a motion. Kathy?
I would second that motion.
Discussion? Seeing none, Laura, would you please call the roll?
Ms. Byer?
Yes.
Mr. Boswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Danick?
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Mumgard?
Yes.
Mr. Schulte?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes. Next, I'd like to recognize Annie Mumgard.
Great. Would Mr. Jason Thompson please join me at the podium? Congratulations to you. Very exciting. I'd like to present this as a motion. Whereas Jason Thompson, a science teacher and department chair at Lincoln Southwest High School, has been honored with the 2016 Yale Educator Award, recognizing outstanding educators from around the world who have supported and inspired their students to achieve at a high level. And whereas Jason Thompson demonstrated a willingness to open his class to a student to ensure a student could receive the education they hoped for, and whereas Jason Thompson was outstanding in preparing his students not only for his class, but for the advanced placement test near the end of the semester. And whereas Jason Thompson is widely recognized as a teacher who cares about his students' personal and academic journeys in high school. Now therefore be it resolved that the Lincoln Board of Education does hereby congratulate Jason Thompson for having earned a Yale Educator Award and for his commitment to the students in his classroom.
Thank you.
Very well done.
Thanks to the board for inviting me here today. It's a great honor to be in front of you. Also, thanks to my wife and children. They're in the back there. You know, I spend a lot of hours at school and even at home. Sometimes I'm spending hours, and it's sometimes at the expense of time with them. So they've sacrificed as well as I have. So thank you to them. You know, it's great to be honored in front of my family, peers, administrators. But the thing that makes this award so special is the fact that I was nominated by a student. I think that's probably why we're all in this room right now, is because we want to impact student lives. And so to be recognized from a student, it was really humbling, and I was pleased to have the pleasure to work with Ashley. She was a great student, and so I thank her too. Unfortunately, she's at Yale right now, swimming and studying, I'm sure. So she was a wonderful student, and it was a pleasure to have her, and I thank the board for inviting me here today.
Annie presented that as a motion. Is there a second? Lanny?
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, Laura, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Boswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Danick?
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Mumgard?
Yes.
Mr. Schulte?
Yes.
Ms. Byer?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes. We have a slight difference in our between our printed agenda and the online agenda. So if you're following at home, I'm going to be going with the online version. And next I would like to call up Wendy Van.
Good evening. It's great to see you tonight. It's a busy night for everybody and for our country, and so lots of exciting things going on. When I come to visit with you, I could tell you all kinds of things because the foundation is so busy doing so many things, but I just have a couple of highlights to share with you tonight. We present a dashboard to our board, and this is our year-end dashboard. There's just a couple of things I want to point out to you. One is that we raised $1.52 million for students last year. These are designated funds that go into any one of our 400 funds that we manage here at the foundation, but they're all very, very specific for student needs. We also granted out over $1 million last year. Remember, some of those donations that come in go into endowment funds so that they grow over time. But we were able to give away about $1 million last year. We're really excited about that. I also want to point out the graphs here at the bottom show you the number of, it breaks down this disbursements of $500. All the gifts of $500 or more to schools, we just started to look at what those are. So you can see most of our dollars go to, our larger dollars go to elementary schools. And on the right-hand side, you can see there the particular schools that use the funds the most. So you can see Elliott, Clinton, McPhee, Prescott, Sheridan, Irving, Lincoln High, Northeast, and Southeast are the highest users of the funds at the foundation. You can see that we're really targeting those areas that need the most help with income-wise. So we're excited to look at those numbers. Number of new board members, number of new donors is up significantly over the year prior. Some really great things. I do want to point out real quick, 67 donors have given 10 or more years in a row to the foundation, and 17 donors have given 20 or more years in a row. This is a fantastic partnership and a strong institution in our community, and it only happens because we work together, so thank you for that. And then I just want to point out that we've got some new board members on our board. It's on the back side there. These guys are eager and excited to serve the school district and our students, and have been really brought on for some exciting skills that they bring to our organization. So thrilled about that. Moving on, I just want to tell you our board met about 2 weeks ago to decide what we were going to do for our strategic plan. And what we did is we came up with a one-year plan so that we can be ready and prepared for when the district completes their strategic plan. And in essence, this year is getting ready to make sure that we are able to catch the big ideas that happen in our community and partner with you to make them happen from the philanthropic side. So as you're doing your planning, please consider how the foundation can draft alongside you to make sure that we're successful all across our community. We're also partnering with the district on a project that we're calling business engagement, for lack of a better term. So you're familiar with our Fund a Need program. Imagine Fund a Need on steroids. This is a way for businesses to engage with their schools in a way that protects students from unnecessary advertising and all that kind of stuff, but also brings great resources to the schools. So we're really partnering with we're listening to PTOs, principals, and our business community, as well as our district colleagues, to help design something that's really going to work across all of those audiences. Really excited about that, but it's, as you can imagine, a complex system that we're trying to build. And finally, I want to tell you that the awards have all been submitted, and we will be announcing our teacher awards very soon. One other thing I just want to let you know is the wellness program was once again funded by, we have a donor who has funded the wellness program for several years, and he decided to fund it once more again this year, and that provides the stipends to the teachers for the wellness dollars and the wellness challenges to really inspire the great work that's going on with the LPS Wellness Initiative. So any questions that you have of me? Thank you.
Congratulations. I guess I'll just make a comment. Congratulations. It's really exciting to see the growth on that.
It's fun, isn't it? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Wendy. Next, I would like to call up Leanne Johnson. And while you're making your way up, Dr. Staven, would you like to introduce this item?
Yes, Leanne is here with some very special guests from Dawes Middle School and Goodrich Middle School. And I'd also like to welcome Lincoln Arneal from Launch Leadership. And Angie Pluggy, the principal at Dawes, is also with us tonight. We have some students who are going to talk just briefly about some new opportunities they had with an experience that's come to them. Leanne will talk a little bit more about it through Launch Leadership.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you, board, for having us. What a great looking group of people I have behind me, a supporting cast. It's great. We always welcome the opportunity to come and share with the board the exciting things young people are doing through the CLCs. And tonight you will hear from CLC school community coordinators and students who have been involved in the leadership clubs at Dawes and Goodrich CLC sites. This opportunity happened as a result of an expanded learning opportunity grant through the Nebraska Department of Education. And as a result of that grant, we were able to develop leadership club opportunities at those 3 sites, Dawes, Goodrich, and North Star as well. We have also had the great opportunity to develop a new partnership as a result of this grant, and that partnership is with Launch. And Lincoln Arnell, the executive director, has been instrumental in helping to support the development of the leadership clubs at these 3 CLC sites. These clubs are designed to provide structured leadership skill building with students on a weekly basis throughout this school year. And the primary goal of our partnership is to reach students that would not normally be engaged or have the opportunity to be engaged with Launch. As a partner, Launch has provided a solid leadership curriculum that supports our middle school sites, and they have been highly dependable on ensuring that we have club leaders that are there on a weekly basis, that are passionate and excited and engaged with our young people. And they know their stuff when it comes to leadership. And so it has been a really solid curriculum for us to introduce through our CLC sites. The other thing that I would want to say is that you're not going to hear from North Star tonight, but I want you to know that there are 30 North Star students that had the opportunity to attend the Launch Summer Workshop this past summer. And the CLC staff at North Star are busy engaging those 30 students in the leadership club at North Star. So this isn't just a middle school endeavor, it also is impacting our North Star students. And it is providing an opportunity for the middle school students and the high school students to interface and have some capstone events on a quarterly basis, which you may hear from our staff. But the heart of this work happens at the CLC sites, and we couldn't do it without the CLC site coordinators and the club leaders. They impact the lives of students every single day. So I'm going to turn it over to Maisha Essex, who's the school community coordinator at Dawes, and Carnetta Griffin, who is a club leader. They will introduce the students, and then Lindsay Limbach, the CLC coordinator from Goodrich, will kind of close the presentation out. So thank you for your time.
Hello, as Leanne stated, my name is Maisha Essex, and I am the CLC coordinator at Dawes Middle School. Our CLC at Dawes, we strive to give our students opportunities in 3 main areas, which is leadership development, career exploration, and service learning and civic engagement. Now, our emerging leaders group is no different from that structure, and we choose those students. Those students are nominated by Dawes staff, and we target students who have tremendous leadership potential, but just may not be able to foster that in the environment that they're in, maybe because they feel them as themselves that they're not a leader, they don't see themselves in that role. It could be because of resources, or it simply can be because they do not connect or identify or feel represented in already established leadership groups. We take those students who are committed to being in emerging leaders and who want to be in emerging leaders, and we teach them skills to build their leadership capacity while also connecting them to community resources and community organizations, and then helping them with their transition into high school. I do have Ms. Carnetta Griffin here with us, who is the Emerging Leaders Advisor for CLC at Dawes. And our partnership with Launch is great because not only did they come on board understanding our objectives and are willing to meet those objectives, but they came with such engaging curriculum that brought more value to our learning process. And Ms. G will tell you more, sorry, Ms. Griffin, that's what we call them at school. Ms. Griffin will tell you more about launch and that relationship and the application of their curriculum with our students on a daily basis.
Hello, everyone. As she stated, my name is Carnetta Griffin, and I am the Emerging Leaders Advisor at Dawes Middle School. And so I work primarily with our students on Thursdays. And what we do is we take what they've learned on Mondays and apply application to their lives more specifically. So they have goals, and how can we tailor it to each student to where they can implement those leadership skills in and out the classroom and also in our community. In some ways, we develop those application skills are through field experiences, whether it's going to a campus or a community place, or whether it's having speakers come talk to us, and also being able to reach out to the community. And the way that the students are able to then showcase what they're learning and be able to bring in the community is at the end of the quarter, we have Capstones, where students show what they have been learning. They're able to utilize their leadership skills, their presentation skills, and also bridge their leadership skills with the community. And so to further talk about that, we have two lovely students to share their experiences, Valicia McRiley from Dawes Middle School and Brianna Pagan from Goodrich Middle School.
Hello everyone, my name is Felicia. I'm currently a proud member of Emerging Leaders. Our main focuses are communication, relationships, and our career development. These things will help us better prepare us for high school and college. The knowledge and experience of Emerging Leaders will offer to be very helpful in success in life and achieve our personal goals.
Hello, my name is Brianna Pagan. I am a 7th grader at Goodrich Middle School, and I am part of the Be a Leaderly Club. In the Be a Leaderly Club, we are comfortable to give out opinions as a group. We are able to work together and get along. We can share opinions and build encouragement. My favorite activity in leadership is icebreakers. Icebreakers are activities where our club leaders ask us personal questions or trivia questions to help us clear out our minds at the beginning of the club. When doing icebreakers, I feel that I can learn things about others and myself. Because of activities like these and our group collaboration, I think the Launch Leadership Club has helped me for the better. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lindsay Limbach, and I'm the CLC coordinator for Goodrich CLC. And thank you for the opportunity tonight to let us speak with you about this evening about the positive impact that the Be Leaderly program in partnership with Launch Leadership has had on our students. You have heard from our students themselves on the impact of the program, and now let me share a little bit of my perspective as a site coordinator. We're about a month and a half into this program, and I've already seen growth in a lot of our individuals as well as the group as a whole. Our group consists of many silent leaders. These students have great ideas, but they don't always speak up. They lead by example, but sometimes get lost in the crowd. They may not always take risks and tend to stay within their comfort zones. Through this launch program, I've seen students come out of their shells completely. The launch volunteers, along with our leadership coach, have done a wonderful job in creating a culture just within the club itself where the students feel comfortable being uncomfortable. I see students who are usually silent engage in heavy conversation with their peers. I see students being loud and goofy while practicing communication through an awesome activity, then debriefing about the importance of communication in a more serious fashion. I see students debating topics in a respectful manner while getting to know each other in the process, and I see them also sharing very personal things about themselves and then having their team members find commonalities within those stories. Bringing the group closer together, their dynamic is pretty unreal. While we embed leadership into many of our programs throughout our Goodrich CLC, I value how intentional, effective, and relatable the launch program is for our students. I'm excited to see the short-term benefits of field trips, guest speakers, some of the summits that the students themselves will be planning, but I'm also anxious to see how the program will benefit them long-term, not only throughout Goodrich, but once they go to North Star, any other high school here in Lincoln, and then hopefully they'll get to take it to college. So thank you. We appreciate your support as we continue to collaborate with our Launch Leadership Program. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. Normally I go last, but let me say this first. Anyone who spends any time talking with me knows that I'm a huge fan of our CLCs, but also in the past year and a half or so, I've become a huge fan of the Launch Leadership Program. And I think that was the time when Jane and Steve and I went to an awards event, and I had had some awareness of the program before, but I didn't realize how long they've been around. I'm looking at Lincoln, it's been over 30 years? 50 years. And a lot of lives have been positively touched by this program. So I was very excited to find out that we're getting some program content in Lincoln Public Schools. That's super neat. Kathy?
Well, first, I want to say thank you. The CLCs, I've been fighting for them since I started on the board. And this is one program that I've seen make direct impact on children's lives as they are in the programs and as they grow and become young adults. Brianna and Belicia, you both represented your schools with extreme grace and poise, and I'm very proud of you. Good job. I know your principals will be beaming when they see this on the board. Take your leadership back to your buildings. Don't be afraid to speak up and accept the challenge, because as you go to high school, we need leaders like you. So good job. Thank you.
Other comments? Thank you, ladies, for joining us tonight. Next, that brings us to public comment. I do have one blue card here, and I would like to recognize Deb Andrews. And Deb, you know the drill. You'll have 5 minutes, and I'll start the clock when you start talking.
Thank you. Deb Andrews, 1235 A Street. I've spoken many times about reading. My big concerns are reading and math. I asked one of the school board members what reading program was used in special education, and in response, she smiled and said she had no idea. Piqued my interest. According to the National Assessment of Educational Progress scores, just 1/3 of Nebraska students score proficient in reading. Illiterate people cannot govern themselves. In the information age, reading is essential for life and to keep the republic. The brain architecture for reading is on the left side, the left hemisphere. Phonemes, distinct units of sound, have been tracked back to Africa. The brain learns language through phonemes. The neurological pathways necessary for language learning are present at birth, evolution. In Rudolf Flesch's books of 1955 and 1981, Why Johnny Can't Read and Why Johnny Still Can't Read, Flesch explained phonics and only phonics must be taught first. It is how the brain has evolved over 50,000 years. The child must first be taught letters, the sounds they make, and rules for pronunciation. In 2009, Stanislaus Dehaan's book, Reading in the Brain, confirms Flesch's hypothesis and provides the details of how the brain learns to read. If you're too busy to read the book, you can now watch Dehaan's lecture online. It's a good summary of his reading brain research. The brain needs to focus on individual letters in order to build the neural codes in the language center of the brain, the left hemisphere. Unfortunately, when the child is taught to focus on the whole word, the shape of the word, it misorients the child's attention to the wrong side, the right hemisphere of the brain. The National Council on Teacher Quality has reported for years teacher preparation is not aligned with the reading research. That means certified teachers don't know how to teach reading, which brings us to your handout. I received this from a Lincoln Public Schools parent of a first grader in early October. A few excerpts from the homework. Things good readers do to read words. Look at the whole word. Look at the end of the word. Look for spelling patterns. Reread and try to say the new word using meaning clues to help you. Ask for help. Look around the room or in another book. There's no mention of individual letters or sounds or sounding out. On the back of this paper are prompts to help your reader for the parents. A few excerpts. Check the picture. Reread to check. Does it make sense? Does your guess match the letters? Read ahead of the tough spot and then go back. This does not teach reading. This child is not being taught how to read. Worse, it activates the right hemisphere of the brain. These strategies are not geared to the language center. This can cripple children for life. In America, we need leaders. Why does this continue after decades when we have the information of how the brain learns to read? The definition of treason is a crime of betrayal to one's own country.
1 minute, Deb.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board tonight? Seeing none, that brings us to the consent agenda. Annie?
I would like to pull item number 1, facilities use rates, number 8765, please.
Noted. Is there a motion? Lanny?
Move approval of the consent agenda with the item that's been noted removed.
Barb?
I second.
Comments? Connie?
Out of abundance of caution, I hereby declare a potential conflict of interest and hereby abstain from voting on check number 569467 as part of agenda item 8.2A as set forth in the agenda materials for this meeting. I have signed and filed the recommended form which reflects my intent in my vote on same. I vote in favor of the balance of consent items.
Other comments? Seeing none, Laura, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Danig?
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Mungard?
Yes.
Mr. Schulte?
Yes.
Ms. Byer?
Yes.
Mr. Boswell?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes. Next, that brings us to items for first reading. Item 9.1.1, Policy 8400, Board Operating Procedures, Meetings. Barb?
Yes, I go and serve on the policy committee with Matt Schulte and Kathy Danning. I'm going to turn this over to John Neal to explain what it is that we have looked at this time.
Thank you, Mrs. Byer. In policy 8400, I'd just like to identify 3 major changes, but would be happy to answer questions on any part of the revision. First is in the section headed meetings. It creates, in the second paragraph, it creates a specific definition for a regular meeting to help clarify when the board comes together as 7 members at a social function or a chamber function or a community function. That's not a meeting because it doesn't meet the intent of the meeting. This clearly identifies that in a definition, the intent of a board meeting occurs when the body is intentionally convened for the transaction of business and advance notice is given. And this comes up several times, has come up several times in the past, so this will hopefully alleviate that problem. Second, in the next section, under regular meetings, it clearly identifies the difference between a regular meeting, which occurs usually twice a month, and the other meetings that are held, including work sessions and special sessions. And the important distinction between those 2 types of meetings is a regular meeting includes the full order of business, where a special meeting can be focused on the particular work that needs to be done at that meeting. For instance, a work session is unlikely to have a consent agenda, for example. And so that clarifies people that are watching the meetings to know what and can anticipate what would happen. And third is on page 2 of the policy. At the very end, the open meetings, we updated policy 1130, identifying our open meetings guideline in February of 2014, and it has similar language with this policy. We neglected to update both sets of language at the same time. So this corrects that mistake and has this policy match policy 1130. I'd be happy to answer any other questions about this policy.
Questions, Matt?
Not a question, but just a comment. I really appreciate the committee members as well as John and Jim Guessford in helping work on this policy. A couple things. I like that the terminology becomes, we actually tried to adapt the terminology to what we use. And so that was one thing. And the other thing I just would like to point out is that the last adjustment he talked about,
I really appreciate and celebrate the fact that all of our meetings are as open as they are. And there's actually another policy that addresses committees that says that our committees as well are open to the public and to media. And so just maybe a little emphasis on that, because I think that's something unique that we do that I think we all celebrate and are glad that we do, of keeping those committees open to people as well.
We work pretty hard on transparency.
Yeah.
Thanks, Matt. If there are no questions on that one, then John, do you want to just slide in onto the next one, item 9.1.2, policy 8410?
8410 involves operating procedures for time and place of meetings. It is a companion with 8400. There's two areas I'd like to focus on. One is under notification of members of meetings in the second paragraph. You'll see additions that include electronic notification of board members. Previously, the policy required the delivery of the agenda to board members to be officially delivered, and this moves us into this century in electronic notification. So that was a good catch by board members to have this updated. Thank you, Mr. Schulte. And the second, notification to public, it allows us to do that same thing with the community, adding our board e-meetings as well as the website as places we can identify the location and purpose of meetings. I'd be happy to answer any questions about those items or any other part of the revision.
Questions for John? All right, seeing none, those will be back for action at our next meeting. Thanks, John. Next, that brings us to item 9.1.3, Series 2016 bond issue. We get to welcome up our friend Scott Keene. And Dr. Standish, would you like to introduce the item?
You bet. This is a first reading of an item that'll come back to you at your next meeting that establishes the parameters for staff to use in issuing or selling the remainder of our bond issue. So as a reminder, this takes us back to our 2014 bond issue. We had an amount of $153,295,000. We issued $120 million of that, and that's what we've been drawing down from to pay for construction projects to date. We anticipate that our drawdown schedule in December, we will be needing the remaining $33 million to maintain cash flow for projects. You don't want to necessarily issue more than you're going to be using within a 3-year window, so that's why we stagger the issues. And this outlines the parameters. You can see we do have a February 15th date there, but we would anticipate answering any questions you have, and with board approval at our next meeting, going to sale even here in December. We think the interest rate climate's very favorable, and this will be favorable for taxpayers, and we'll bring back a report of the actual sale and where we landed as far as things go. I know Scott Keene's available. We appreciate his help. Mike Rogers involved from Gilmore Bell, and also Jim Gesford from Legal Counsel, and Jill Polly's instrumental in working on all of this. So we stand ready to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for staff? Kathy?
No questions. This came before the Finance Committee, and one other thing to note is when we do a bond issue, we have a 10-year plan. These are rolling down projects, so we are able to address additional projects as these funds as these bonds are sold. So this is getting more work done off of the same bond issue. I like that this is a shorter time frame on these bonds. They mature in 2022 as opposed to a 30-year, and a lot of people don't really realize we have all of those options. So I'm just really pleased to present this to the board and to the community.
Thanks, Kathy. Other comments or questions? Matt?
Yeah, I just wondered, so the shortened length that Kathy just mentioned, how else does this compare to our projections a few years ago when this bond issue was passed, as far as the percentage and stuff like that we're paying on it?
So if we go back to 2014, we would have had a much higher interest rate, potentially even up to 5%, because it would have had a 25-year maturity on it. So bringing it to a shorter time frame brings down the interest cost for taxpayers and for the school district. So this would be shorter. This would be a comparable projection to what we did when we developed the 2015-2016 budget. So as a reminder, when we developed the 2015-2016 budget, we spent some time on both a refunding of some bonds, an advance refunding of the 2006 series, but then also switching this issue to a shorter time frame, knowing the growth that we're seeing around the community and knowing that we potentially had the capacity within the existing levy to to pay the bonds off or pay the debt off more quickly is, number one, a win for the community and taxpayers because you're paying less in interest. And then it also is very wise for the school district to look for the future and how we structure debt. So two great conversations that occurred in 2015. It's just now we're getting ready to do what we said we would do during that time frame.
Sure. Good. So it shortens the length and it's a better interest rate, which we all win then.
Correct. Absolutely.
And just to clarify too, this is all part of the existing tax levy. This is not expanding any tax levy or anything like that, correct?
Correct.
Great. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? The part that I heard from that especially loud was lower interest rate and saving taxpayer dollars. And I think that that's super neat. And I think that that is one thing in a list of things, decisions that we make to try to do our part to keep spending responsible, to keep the levy rate as low as we reasonably can. Another thing I wanted to point out, something that you had mentioned, is that this bond passed a couple of years ago, but we don't immediately go out and bond for the whole amount and start paying interest on money that we can't spend right away. It does take some time to spend that money out, and it makes sense, I think, to release or to go out for the bonds in chunks rather than doing the whole thing at once, which again saves taxpayer dollars, which I think is a win for the community. So thanks for your work on that. Seeing no other questions, again, this will be back for action at our next meeting. Thank you. Next, from the superintendent's office, we have the Moore Middle School kitchen equipment item. Dr. Standish.
Yes, this is part of the construction at Moore Middle School. It's time to order kitchen equipment. This is above $500,000, so it'll come to you in the 2-reading format. We did plan for that, so I think we'd be ready to answer any questions you have.
Questions? Seeing none, this will be back at our next meeting. Next, that brings us to action items. We have none tonight. That does take us down to items removed from the consent agenda. And the item I have on note was the facilities use rates. Annie, do you have a motion?
Yes, I'd like to move that we pass, yes, I'd like to move that we pass this.
Moving that we approve the facilities use rates agreement?
Yes.
Thank you. Kathy?
I would second that.
And then Annie, you would ask for this to be pulled?
Yes. I know that this was discussed in the planning committee, and I just would ask that we could just get a little clarity on what it is we're doing and why, and what the thinking, a little bit of the thinking behind it.
Lenny?
Happy to. This was reviewed in the planning committee where I serve with Matt and Barb. And essentially this document, the facility use fees, relates to our policy 3970. Which expresses the intent of the board that we maximize the community's use of our facilities. The idea being that our taxpayers and citizens pay for this through bond issues, and so the primary use is school and educational uses, but we also want our community to be able to use the facilities that they paid for. Another part of 3970 says that we want to recapture the costs of use. So as an example, if you were to use one of the pools at the high school, there's cleaning that needs to be done in the pools. There's a custodial around the use of a lot of types of facilities. And so to be fair, we want to capture the costs, the direct costs that are associated with the use of that. So periodically, staff will update the fee schedule, and it'll list out the various types of facilities you could use, whether that's Seacrest Field, whether that's an auditorium in a high school, whether it's a classroom, and try to have those reflect the costs that we're incurring. This was discussed in planning. Some of the things that we talked about were the renovations at Seacrest that really substantially improved the experience at that facility. We also talked about some of the fees, percentage-wise, since they hadn't been updated in a little while, increasing. So we wanted to trim that back a little bit and kind of catch that up over time so it isn't a big shock to the people that use our facilities. But that's essentially the conversation and the thinking behind the recommendation.
And was it applied basically kind of overall the whole fees? Is that what I'm seeing there?
So if you look across the fees, each one of those was updated individually, and I'd let either Liz or Scott speak to that if they wish. We highlighted a few of the items that we dove into a little more detail.
Mr. Boswell already referenced one, Seacrest Field, with the investment made there. That was a fee where we did have an increase. That is a place where it's typically a negotiation as far as someone's interested in doing an event in Seacrest Field. We also looked at auditoriums as a place where we looked at cost, and I would just underline some of the things Mr. Boswell shared. I think we were really trying to look at accounting for current costs, direct costs the school district incurs by having groups in the facility, but also having that priority for community use. I think we also wanted to be incremental. So if there was a place where we saw that we hadn't quite kept pace with cost as well, we were taking kind of an incremental approach to that, and then also trying to be transparent so that you have that fee in front of the community for using that space. So there were a couple places where, based on cost, based on the investments the board had made, where we might have a bigger increase. Otherwise, they were fairly incremental across the board.
Okay, thank you very much.
Barb?
I just wanted to add one thing in that discussion was I expressed some interest in finding out what the wear and tear on our facilities, because that's also a cost, and to discuss possibly adding in some depreciation costs, and staff are looking into that.
Lanny, you mentioned that this was an attempt to try to recapture some of our actual costs, and I would observe that it could probably be very reasonably argued that even with these increases, we're not actually capturing our true cost, and that these are still a great bargain for the community to be able to use these facilities.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. That's the balancing act that we want to have. We want to make sure that the community feels welcome and able to use these facilities, and at the same time recapture a share of those costs.
And take care of community resources. Yep. Kathy?
And if I recall, there's a board policy that guides the facility use, and so while we have the recapture of funds, we also have a policy, or a series of policies, that guides who and how buildings can be used. Am I correct?
Correct. There is a regulation that places a priority order on use of facilities, of what groups can use facilities.
So this isn't changing any of that for any community members that are watching?
Correct.
Thank you.
Great. Other comments or questions? Seeing none, Laura, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Duncan?
Yes.
Ms. Mumgarde?
Yes.
Mr. Schulte?
Yes.
Ms. Byer?
Yes.
Mr. Boswell?
Yes.
Mrs. Danick?
Yes.
Mr. Mayhew?
Yes. Next, that brings us to informational items and reports. Are there any committee chairs who wish to deliver a report on the doings of a committee? Kathy?
We have an ad hoc committee to name a building. We have a new facility being renovated right now. It is currently called the Bison Building. I serve on this committee as chair with Don Mayhew and Matt Schulte and 7 community members who came together to go over submitted names. We are reopening the submission of names on the website for people who would like to honor an individual. And I use the word honor because I believe when we name a building, it should reflect the will of the community and the respect that the community has for Lincoln Public Schools and the education we have in along this whole entire city. We believe that naming a building should honor an individual who has dedicated a life of service, not just to our community, but also to education. A good example would be how we named the Nuremberger building that just opened, and the great amount of transparency, but more than that, the great amount of respect that came from all across this community. So what I'm asking our community members to do is to go into the website and send us some names of individuals up through November 22nd, and send some supporting information. It helps us a lot if we kind of know why you're nominating them, as opposed to just putting a name out. And we will review them in committee, and our hope is to have this done by the first of the year and present it to the board.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Lanny?
Oh, and don't forget that we have a live stream today from a committee member, Brendan Evans. If you want to go in and watch that, Brendan took some questions.
We did. Thank you. Lanny?
Yes, I just wanted to give a brief update from the Strategic Planning Committee and begin that by thanking board members for attending the community engagement sessions. I think we had over 200 scheduled, and we're certainly not getting to all of them, but I know board members have been busy moving around town getting to as many as possible. So far, we've engaged over 4,000 voices through our process. We have 2 more open forum sessions. One is Thursday night at Lux Middle School, starting at 6 o'clock. And then another one is next week on the 15th at Mount Zion Baptist Church, starting at 12:30. And of course, if you cannot attend one of the sessions, anyone can go on the website, lps.org. The upper right-hand corner has a link to the survey. It's the same survey that everyone's getting. So I think we're getting some great feedback. I really appreciate the thoughtful ideas that people are sharing and all the work of our facilitators, our building principals, and our board members that have attended the meetings.
4,000 voices heard and more to come.
More to come.
Outstanding. Lanny, I know you've been taking the lion's share of those meetings too. Thanks for your work on that.
You're very welcome.
Other committee reports? Seeing none, that takes us to the Career Academy. Lanny, is there a report?
Just note that the Career Academy Board will meet tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock.
Outstanding. And that brings us to the superintendent's update. Dr. Joel.
3 small items. Last week, Dr. Statham and I had an opportunity to travel to Baltimore, Maryland, as part of the League of Innovative Schools Digital Promise. It's a group that Lincoln Public Schools was invited in during inception. And this, by way of reminding, this was a congressional design, a group that was appointed that was given the responsibility of coming together in terms of a thought process, think tank, and create the digital transformation of the future. And the meetings are absolutely fascinating. I can tell you that it's morphed from 12 school districts to close to 60 or 70, I think, and districts have to apply to get into it. And what's fascinating for us is we always pick up 2 or 3 or 4 things that are happening. With Baltimore County, if you're familiar with Baltimore, Baltimore County surrounds Baltimore City, and in a lot of ways looks very, very similar to Lincoln Public Schools. But we saw a lot of things that we're already doing, and of course we were able to come back with a few ideas as well too. So that's a group that we continue to be a part of. A statistic that was floating around, and this is not verifiable, so I give it to you only because it shows the compelling reason why this group meets, is that still close to 70% of the districts in America don't have any kind of a digital transformation plan or technology plan. And what's even more fascinating in another group, which is a group of digital education leaders in the country, coming out with a position paper of which Lincoln's going to be featured, really talks about the work and how to get the work done. And there are districts that receive big grants, foundations, donations, and are able to do things to scale and measure. There's districts that take quite a while to create the plan. Really like the way we've done ours. It started out with some conversations. It involved our community, part of our strategic plan. But I think that's a story that's worth telling in America, because that's probably the majority of the districts and how they're going to go about doing the work. So very, very proud of what we're doing in Lincoln. We always come back feeling good about what we're doing, as many of you do when you travel. But by the same token, too, the mandate that we have is to spread that good word and some of those roadmaps, if you will, on how other districts can become successful. Dr. Weber and Mr. Christie told me today they held a diversity recruitment event last night at dinner and had several dozen students from around the state, most of the universities that were represented, which is the most we've ever had. So kudos to Mr. Christie and Dr. Weber and his team for getting the word out about the importance. Of course, I think as one of the most rapidly growing school districts in the state, the word is out that the jobs are here. And the last couple of years, of course, we've brought in more than 400 teachers. And then just a reminder that state finances seem to be going the wrong way, at least as they've been reported based on forecasting board forecasts, and several reactions, of course, across the state, gearing up for what could be a much more difficult year. And legislative session begins in January, and we've already begun to have a lot of, we've got to get through tonight, of course, to know exactly who we're working with. But the truth of the matter is, it's going to be a very challenging financial environment. And I think that gets addressed quite a bit by just our explosive growth. Anybody that's had an opportunity to drive around the city of Lincoln, at least along the perimeter, it's nothing short of astounding how Lincoln is growing and growing rapidly and growing in all 4 corners of the city of Lincoln. This isn't the city of Lincoln that people who have lived here for a long, 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 long time can say resembles anything of the past. It's